Hey everybody, I'm Nick Layton.
And I'm Leah Bottima.
And we're the hosts of Were You Raised by Wolves?
Each week we try to make the world a kinder, nicer place.
Well, that's the idea, at least.
I mean, we try.
Have you ever wondered what to do if you're ghosted?
Or what to do when a friend asks you to borrow money?
Or the proper way to eat Cheetos?
You know, the big questions.
So please find Were You Raised by Wolves wherever you listen.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Welcome to Spill and Dish, a podcast from the Specialty Food Association. Founded in 1952, SFA is the leading trade association and source of information about the $194 billion specialty food industry. We champion the food producers, retailers, and buyers who make up the specialty food world. In this special episode, we are speaking with a session speaker at the upcoming Summer Fancy Food Show in New York City, taking place June 23rd through the 25th. Today's guest is Paul Willis, founder and hog farmer of Niman Ranch and 2024 SFA Leadership Award winner for sustainability. Niman Ranch is a network of small and independent U.S. family farmers that follow strict animal welfare and sustainability protocols. Willis will be leading a session titled Discover the Future of Food, Sustainably Specialty with Food Tank, about the four pillars of sustainability: human, social, economic, and environmental, and how they drive innovation in the specialty food industry. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let's get started. How did Niman Ranch come to be?
Okay, I need to tell you a little bit about my own history and what I was doing, which was raising about 2,500 to 3,000 pigs a year. So that was the main focus of our farming operation. And things were going along okay. I was selling to the commodity market. And then I guess it was probably in the 80s and into the 90s when factory farming started moving into our area, which would be like northern Iowa. And they were putting up a lot of buildings, and there were a lot of meetings talking about get bigger, get out. And I only had to, go inside one of those buildings once or twice to realize that I just never wanted to raise pigs like that. And there was someplace in here where I was visiting in California, and I ran into a lady at a grocery store that bought a free-range chicken. And I was just, obviously, if I'm traveling to another part of the country, was interested in the grocery store, what's in there. And so it intrigued me, and I asked her about it, and she said, well, it tastes better, and I like the way it's raised. And she was paying about 3 times the money of a commodity chicken. And I'm thinking, well, if they're free-range chickens, there surely should be free-range pigs. And maybe if I could find the right, figure it out, we could do that. And it took me a while, probably maybe 3 or 4 years before I met Bill Niman. And he was in San Francisco and kind of the mecca of a food culture. And I knew if you were going to market something and you were going to be successful, you had to identify your market. And I knew this was the right place to be. If I would try this in Iowa, it wouldn't have worked. People wouldn't have got the whole idea. But things got kind of worse on my end. People that were raising pigs like I was were being docked because the pigs were too fat. They were living outdoors. They had a bigger lung cavity. Their organs were bigger. The yield was smaller, and so not only were we raising the best and the greatest tasting pork, but we were being paid the least, and that all annoyed me, and that continued to push me to try to find a market. So I met Bill and through a friend of mine in San Francisco, and told him what I was doing. And he had a small meat business in the Bay Area, raising some beef and some lamb and a little bit of a source of pork. But he said, well, send me some pork. Let's see how it tastes. And that was the first time it really dawned on me that, I mean, yes, we knew we were raising animals for food, but there had to be a taste factor to it. Does it taste good? Is this a good eating product, and so forth? And what I found out that I didn't know initially was what I was doing, raising and having the right genetics, raising the animals outdoors, the right feed, fresh air, and so on, was producing a superior, vastly superior product from an eating standpoint. And so I sent some pork out of my freezer to California, and they sent it around to Alice Waters and some few other great restaurants in the area, and they were really taken with the eating side of the product. So he said, well, send me 30 hogs. Anyway, we figured it all out. And in February 1995, we did it, and we were on the phone many times a day, I'm sure, and it worked. They showed up 5:30 Monday morning. The product was there. It was a very exciting day. That first 30 pigs that came from my farm. So 2 weeks later, they wanted 34 head. Every 2 weeks, I was selling hogs. I had a lot of pigs, but there were certain times of the year that I was a little bit short. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to look for other farmers that had a supply that also met the standards, at least my own personal standards of raising pigs with a high degree of humane treatment, not factory farming. And out of this whole process, this thinking process, it kind of occurred to me that we needed to differentiate what I was doing and as far as possible from the commodity market. We wanted some type of certification for animal welfare. They didn't want that. They didn't want anybody going into their buildings and so on to see what it was like. And I happened to run across Diane Halverson at a meeting. They were protesting another hog factory that was going in. And she stood up and said, well, what about the pigs? Everybody wanted to talk about the smell or the money and this and that, but it was really somebody who was really speaking about the humane treatment of the animals while they were in our keep. And so we talked afterwards, and out of that, I said, come on down to my farm. She was working for the Animal Welfare Institute at the time. And if I'm not doing it right, let's talk about it. Let's get it right. And between Diane and myself, we ended up writing the pig husbandry standards. And my farm was the first farm in the United States that was validated by the Animal Welfare Institute. And from those standards today, there's some different standards, different organizations and so on, but the standards are basically the same as far as space and having bedding for the sows that are going to make a nest and have baby pigs, and no confinement, no farrowing crates, no gestation stalls, all of those things that are part of factory farming. And no liquid manure pits and so on. So that was kind of the beginning, and then it was there was another important part about the sustainability about it. Bill Niman asked me, "What do you want for your pigs?" This was right when before we started, and I came up with a price which was was at the top end of where the price had ever been for hogs. And he had no problem with that, and that's where we started. That was the sustainability part from an economic point of view from for the farmer. You have to be able to make some money. And at this time, as it is even today, we're losing farmers left and right because they're not paid enough for their investment and what they're doing in as far as raising livestock. It's still a problem. And so at Niman Ranch, we don't pay a commodity price. We pay a special price for a special product, and pay a lot of attention to continue to pay a lot of attention to the animal welfare and the eating quality. And then that translates better for the farmers, better for the animals. and the type of system we have is better for the environment. The pigs are raised outdoors. You don't have huge concentrations in a building that sits over a liquid manure pit. We don't have that. So just by the smaller amounts of numbers we have on our farms, the manure and everything is recycled back onto the land, becomes part of the soil for growing the next crops. And then ultimately, the end user is the consumer, the person that buys the product, and we want somebody that appreciates what we're doing from an animal welfare perspective, and has a good experience, an eating experience, and gets value for what they do and supporting our farmers. Today, we now have 600 Niman Ranch hog farmers and 150 farmers and ranchers raising beef and lamb. And so, we started someplace and it was small, but grew into something that's an economic opportunity for people who want to raise livestock in this manner, and do so and be able to make at least have a good output of an enterprise on their farm.
Yeah, thank you so much for covering all that. I think you did a great job of walking us through how Niman Ranch really speaks to the 4 different pillars of sustainability we were talking about before, and the rudiments of the business, and really how it grew to what it is now, without sort of wavering on the central and core beliefs of animal welfare and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much. Let's move on to discuss a little bit about the upcoming Summer Fancy Food Show session. Is there any topic that you're most excited to speak about?
Well, I think what I'm excited to speak about is there are certain type of businesses like we have that allow people to participate in the agricultural scene today and be part of it. It's a place where people can still get in. We have people that have never grew up on a farm. I was at a farm last week in southern Missouri and it was a surprise to me. And they said neither one of them were farm kids, and they now are Niman Ranch hog farmers. Other things too, and raise some chickens and some eggs and so forth. But yeah, I think that's an important part. There is still a place for people in agriculture, and this is one of them.
That's great. Thank you. So what steps do you recommend specialty food brands, maybe younger brands or younger farmers or ranchers even, to incorporate sustainability, animal welfare into their business practices?
Well, getting back to, if you have a special product, you have to figure out where your special market is and what value you can put on it. And if you don't do that, you're kind of dead in the water before you even start. If you're doing something unique, you have to have a unique price and a unique delivery system and so on. All of those things come into play to make something like that successful.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think, George, people want to know how their food is raised. And that in itself is something it's a growing sort of mindset for people of all ages. They think about it. People ask in grocery stores and so forth. This is what helps the farmers ultimately, in having people that are, asking for these type of things.
Definitely. I know, there's also legislation in the works about increasing food traceability across the supply chain with a lot of different foods. So it's definitely something that's so important. And it is nice to see that desire in different aspects of the industry too, or different aspects of the United States. It's not just coming from one location. It seems to be coming from everywhere. That's great. So looking into the future, looking a little bit into the innovations, things that are like happening right now, what are some practices that you hope other farmers and other ranchers will implement into their operations in, say, the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think sustainability in preserving your soil the best you can, whether it's cover crops or recycling the animal manure or pasture grazing, all these kind of things come into play. Looking at the full cycle and rather than mining the soil.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That idea of regenerative agriculture too, that you had mentioned that Niman Ranch does.
Yes, and I live in North Iowa, and almost every square inch of this state is cultivated, and a lot of it's for corn and soybeans. So more diversity, I think, would be a much healthier situation, and incorporate that into a sustainable model. Cover crops and possibly alternative crops. We need more diversity in crops.
Yeah, that's great. That's interesting. Yeah, thank you so much. So I know you're active also in dozens of philanthropic organizations that support animal welfare and small farmers, and that you even have worked on co-founding a few of them. What sort of advice would you offer makers that are looking to get involved with similar organizations?
Well, join those organizations, get to know the people, and there's a wealth of information. We have Niman Ranch hog farmers have more or less kind of organically grown into an organization. We have a hog farmer appreciation dinner where our farmers are all invited as the guests of honor. We have this annually, and we have some guest speakers and some educational things, but probably the things that the farmers enjoy most is seeing each other, because they tend to be islands in the stream out here in the middle of industrial agriculture, and they come together and they're, they tend to be like-minded, and they have an interchange of ideas, and being involved in those kind of things. And also here in the state of Iowa, we have Practical Farmers of Iowa, does a lot of on-farm research, stuff like that. Being involved in that, even if you're not a farmer yourself, they have a lot of membership that are urban people, that are they're in agriculture because they're consumers. Everybody eats.
Thank you so much for providing that information. So, a big thanks to Paul Willis for joining us today. You can find out more about the show at specialtyfood.com and heritageradionetwork.org. And remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. This is Spill and Dish, the Specialty Food Association podcast.
Spill and Dish, a Specialty Food Association podcast, is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey, it's Francis Lamb, host of The Splendid Table. Every week on our show, we talk about food and cooking and the meanings of food and cooking. We talk with the most interesting people in food about their techniques, their culture, and everything in between. Whether it's about how fried chicken took over the world or how Instagram changes the way people are actually eating. It's a food show where everyone is welcome. Come join us. You can listen to The Splendid Table wherever you get your podcasts.